An old cemetery, hardly newsworthy. Old family plots and long-gone church cemeteries dot in Atlanta that has grown 100-fold since most were established, many times fully enveloping them, or worse, completely erasing them from public conscience, usually in the name of progress. But this one is different, unique, something truly keeping those buried here from resting in peace.
This is the world's busiest airport. There are no breaks.
Under the mighty roar, and these souls are used to it after 70 years, sadly.
This is the quietest, most peaceful spot in the airport.
This cemetery sits in the middle of one of the busiest airports in the world, Atlanta's own Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. And it's not the only one. Just down the road sits another, the Hart Family Cemetery. Both are situated between runway 4 and 5 in a small green space, surrounded by miles of pavement and concrete, moving passengers on commuter and jumbo jets to destinations far and wide.
You know, we can't even imagine all of that's happened on this land. And these gravestones will only last as long as their descendants are here to tend them and fight for them. So it's just really remarkable that so much around here has changed, but this is one little slice of the history that makes you think about all that's happened before.
Hannah Palmer is a local author that has studied the impacts of the airport on the surrounding areas.
You know, I think sometimes we think of Hartsfield-Jackson as this behemoth, which it is, that the biggest economic engine in the state, and you can make the argument in the Southeast, and I think it is. Nothing was going to get in the way of that. Just nothing. And nothing has.
Except maybe these two small cemeteries that are located between the runways.
Her book, Flight Path, A Search for Roots Beneath the World's Busiest Airport, follows her personal journey to find out what happened to her childhood homes as the airport grew, wiping out not just the neighborhood she grew up in, but in many cases, the whole communities.
How far away are we from where Mountain View was?
I think maybe it's about 2 miles to the east of here.
And what point did it completely disappear from our consciousness?
Late 70s is when the city lost its charter. And then from there, by the early 80s, City of Atlanta was buying out all of the homes and relocating residents and businesses.
And swallowing up places like College Park and Hapeville as well.
That's right. Where we're standing was rural, but College Park to the west, Hapeville to the north, and Mountain View to the east were densely populated. Lots and lots of hundreds of homes and businesses were relocated to make way for the domestic terminal and the sort of cargo area that was built in Hapeville. That they relocated hundreds of families.
But to understand why this all took place, you first have to know how this airport became the behemoth that it is today. In 1910, Coca-Cola owner Asa Candler bought 300 acres of farmland just south of the small town of Hapeville, hoping to cash in on the automobile craze happening at the time. He built a racetrack. The other newfangled invention, the airplane, also made appearances at the flying exhibitions at the track. When the public and Candler lost interest in the new fads, the land went quiet, but aviation continued to grow in importance. And by 1925, Atlanta needed an airport, so Candler leased the land of the city and turned it into Candler Field. City Council member William Hartsfield pushed to turn the property into a major airport, and by 1929, the city wanted to buy the land. Hartsfield persuaded the city to spend around $94,000, about $1.8 million in today dollars, to purchase the site. Throughout the 1930s, the airfield was upgraded and expanded. The first passenger terminal was built as commercial aviation took off. Delta Airlines moved their headquarters there and created a hub. By the time World War II had started, commercial and military training flights made it the busiest airport in the country. It would become a familiar theme. New runways were paved, and an old Army hangar was converted into a temporary passenger terminal. By the end of the war, developers in the surrounding towns began to build small ranch-style tract homes for GIs returning from the war, many finding jobs related to the airport, and at the Ford Motors plant built in Hapeville. In 1959, the jet age arrived, and it was apparent that a new terminal was needed. That opened in May of 1961. By 1964, the airport had 2 east-west runways. You can see some of the neighborhoods protruding between them. William Hartsfield, who went on to become Atlanta's mayor and was so instrumental in creating the airport, died in 1971. It was renamed in his honor. The international moniker was added that year when Eastern Airlines started service to Mexico City. Deregulation of the airline industry occurred in 1978, and that meant more airlines trying to use the increasingly crowded space. A terminal that was designed to handle 18 million passengers annually was now handling 42 million. Yet again, a new terminal and layout was needed. Work began on the Midfield terminal that we all know and love today. The plan would require over 1,200 acres of surrounding land to be acquired. Mayor Maynard Jackson would lead the charge for the new facility, costing over $500 million. It would officially open in September of 1980 and be the world's largest passenger terminal. Continued expansion and added runways would be the formula for the next 40 years.
What was it like being a little girl growing up in the shadow of the airport? It must have been kind of exciting.
It was. To be able to see the planes take off and land, it was. And at the time, sometimes we'd go out to the edge of the airport and watch them take off and land. But as the planes were built larger and the airport started gradually expanding, the noise just became almost deafening.
Sue Nunnally grew up in a College Park neighborhood that bordered the airport.
Roughly speaking, where would we be in the old Newton Estates?
Just probably about a quarter of a mile up where the back of the rental car agency is. That would have been the corner of our street that was Oak Hill Drive.
They saw firsthand how the city used eminent domain to force their parents and neighbors out of their homes.
When this first started to sort of rear its head in the early 1970s, was there optimism that was rooted in the strength of neighborhood or maybe some false lights from local politicians? I mean, at some point you realize this is a giant octopus that simply is not going to be defeated.
I think my parents had hoped that they could maybe fight the city of Atlanta and maybe try to keep their neighborhood, keep their homes. And maybe if they just added storm windows and all the things that you could, HVAC systems that would insulate them from the noise, that maybe they could stay. And it just did not become a reality. It was just very sad because I think they had a home that they had paid for and it was their dream home.
Do you remember the sort of, I don't know, the collective feel of when the verdict had come in here that everybody was going to have to go? What it was sort of like? I mean, you know, it's almost like being deported in sort of a strange way.
It is. And some of the words that were used in some of the paperwork that my parents had kept for years and years, it was displacement, relocation, and acquisition. And it was a cold process. But from the side of the city of Atlanta, they needed to follow certain steps to take the homes that were there.
And they always missed it, even when they were gone, right?
They did. They always referred to it as the home place. And you always knew they were talking about the home on Oak Hill Drive.
Finally forced out, Nunnally says her family were able to bring one keepsake.
Their most prized possession of everything they owned was not something inside the house, but it was the hundreds of azaleas that they had raised. When they bought another place in Fayette County, they decided to take as many of the azaleas as they could. They probably moved 50 or so, and they let other folks take them as well. They were very connected to that, and they loved growing them.
No one can argue about the importance or financial impact that the airport has on the region. It's the state's largest employer with more than 63,000 people directly employed from its operations, contributing over $66 billion to the state's economy. Its on and off again role as the world's busiest airport means over 100 million passengers pass through its halls and gates each year, and attracts businesses from around the world because of its international connectivity. Even Sue Nunnally understands why the neighborhoods around the airport were destined to disappear.
When you see this and you see what Hartsfield-Jackson has evolved into, what do you sense? What is your reflection like in 2025?
Well, of course, it's changed over the years. I mean, I am grateful for the airport. And
your husband's a pilot, so
yes,
there's a sort of irony to that.
There is. I mean, we love planes, and we love travel, and so the ease of coming up to the Atlanta airport, wherever from the suburbs, it's wonderful to have that option.
Hannah Palmer agrees, but also understands the importance of remembering what and who came before.
The landscape is ancient. It's haunted. We can't even imagine all of that's happened on this land. And these gravestones will only last as long as their descendants are here to tend them and fight for them. So it's just really remarkable that so much around here has changed, but this is one little slice of the history that makes you think about all that's happened before. I enjoy how the families that are buried here are disrupting the development of the airport. They're kind of holding a space in time and holding, a glimpse of the past that is in conflict and contrast with the rest of progress at the airport.
For Georgia Public Broadcasting, I'm Jeff Hullinger.